Have you ever felt in your races that your car just doesn't want to turn in? Or have you ever felt that you keep losing the rear of the car? This video will show you why that happens. Something invisible is happening in your driving, and this video will make that visible. You'll know better how to improve your lap time, how to improve your driving inputs, and it's gonna make one easy setup tweak to immediately start using your tires better in a racing simulator. And it doesn't really matter which simulator you drive, this is applicable to all of them. I've been sim racing for years, and this is something that is always in the back of my mind. So let's get into it. To understand this properly, first we need to look at this very short clip of a corner entry with a hypercar in Le Mans Ultimate. Now let's slow that down a little bit, and entering the corner here we're using some steer lock. You can see that in the overlay, and we're approaching. Now there's something really subtle going on why this is all kind of like a failed corner in and out of itself. So first, at this point, we're releasing the throttle and we're slamming the brakes. But there's a problem here, because we have a steer lock a little bit, like a few degrees, and we're hitting the brakes fully. So what's wrong with this? Now, to understand this fully, we have a steer lock here, and we have a brake input, right? This is a problem, especially when you really need to slow down the car. We kind of are not lining up properly for the corner, or we might, but I'm already trying to steer, and you can see here that on the right bottom, I don't know if you can see it, but here the inner tire is locking up at this moment. What's happening with the car, and what's happening, what we cannot see, but what is happening with the car. Let's talk about tire workload. Obviously, or maybe not so obvious for some, we are reaching the workload of the tires. So workload is built up with aerodynamics, mechanical grip, a different set of parameters, but let's keep it simple so everyone can understand. And what basically happened here is the front right is locking up, meaning using this grip circle, it went outside of the window. It's locking up. It cannot produce more grip. There's too much speed in the car. Now the reason why it was locking up is because we are asking two things of this tire. We asking it to steer into this direction, and we want to slow down the car simultaneously. And if we would have had the steering wheel in a straight line, then we are not asking lateral grip of this tire, and we can actually allow it to use a longitudinal grip, increasing our braking performance. So I said in previous newsletters and maybe different videos, and maybe all you watched other videos, talking about holding that steering wheel dead center straight when you want to apply 100% of brake power. And because this was happening, I had to stop braking to not lock up, and then I need to slow down the car again and hit the brake pedal again, and then I try to apply steer lock and I start locking up again, and I'm constantly pushing out this tire in and outside of the workload with my own foot. Then at this moment something changes. I still have brake input and my steering wheel is almost upside down. Hey, and if you're liking this content this far, could you please hit that like button? That really helps me out. And check the links down below. I have different skill level setups, and they will give more nuance to what you're seeing here. So level 1 will be very safe and like very forgiving on every corner entry. Level 5 will be absolutely driving on a knife on an edge, and you can use these different levels to gain skill. Let's keep going. Let me explain this a little bit more. In the previous image, you saw that the inside tire was green. That's actually not happening. So imagine this next scenario where we have a lot of steer lock and we overload this tire all of a sudden. due to weight transfer or load transfer actually is being over here. So the front left has more pressure on it. We're not locking up the inside. So what's kind of happens now is that the front left, we add too much lateral grip of it in this instance, and it just starts sliding into understeer. It's over the limit, not in the fact that we're really locking up or having an issue, but we're just not making the corner. Car is traveling too fast, and yeah, we basically want the tire to do more, but that's nothing happening, right? Another thing to take note of is the rear tires. They actually have plenty of grip and they are in the proper workload, right? But they're also not on the limit. So we're not using these tires and we're like using too much workload of the front left. So let's move on, finish this corner, and then we're going to talk about how to solve this with your inputs. So something you can tackle immediately. We're still braking a little bit, and that is pushing the tire out of the window. Now I am releasing the brakes, and immediately you can see the car starts to turn, and that just pushed the front left back into this orange area. Now the orange area is an area where you got kind of like the adhesion of the tires kind of dropping off. It's a little bit like the close to the point of losing the grip, so it builds up and there's nuance to it. Also something really important to note here is the fastest driver are constantly on this edge. And pretty much every time they are on the throttle, when they're braking, they're basically are masters in keeping this under control. Now here we finish the corner. Let's go to the scenario where we have a lot better inputs. To make a proper example, I want to look at this corner in particular. You see same like weird inputs and understeer and whatever. And on the next lap, we have a way better braking input, better driving in general, and I'll explain the difference here as well. So approaching this straight, hitting down that brake pedal with a full dead center steering wheel. Now there's something else I want to mention as I'm bleeding off the brakes at this point. So we're looking at 150 kilometers, we're looking at like 130, and we're bleeding off the brakes. And now this sudden moment starts to shift where we can apply some steering. Why can I do this right now? And on other corners, it was more of a pain. Let's use the grip circle again to explain it even further. So in this previous example, where we slam the brakes fully with the steering wheel straight, we're using that longitudinal grip on the maximum here without any steer lock. As soon as I would apply some steer lock, immediately they push outside of the window. Now I use this grip circle, by the way. This is This is a grip circle I created myself, but if you Google grip circle, I mean, you can go a mile deep with how grip circles actually work. You can add 10,000 layers of complexity to it. But why did I need to bleed off the brakes while I am still in a straight line? Well, I'll explain you why. Aerodynamics and load transfer. As you're driving 240 kilometers, you're gonna have more load transfer in the initial moment, and you're gonna have more downforce. As you're hitting those brakes, you reduce the downforce and you reduce the load transfer. And what this basically means is if we have lots of load transfer and lots of aerodynamics, this circle is way, way, way bigger. Massive, especially with aerodynamics. Load transfer and tire overload's a whole other freaking can of worms we're not going to open right now. But what it basically means, this circle gets smaller as we're bleeding off the brakes. So that's why we need to bleed it off. And the perfect balance between applying steer lock and staying in this orange area, but like the absolute limit, that is just something you need to practice. But I think now you're aware of it, that you're pushing your tire outside of the window could really help you out in your inputs. Now, again, what I said earlier, grip circles are more complex than I'm explaining here. Most of the time, the grip circle is more something like a straighter line over here. So if we have a tire and you have the grip circle, you basically also have a little bit of a drop off when you're asking cornering and braking grip simultaneously. Now here we're continuing the corner, we're bleeding off the brakes more. We can apply even more steer lock. You can actually feel it. You can see it on the horizon. And look at this delta on the what we're gaining here in lap time and why this is so beneficial. Now I'm lining up the car better. I can apply throttle and you can see how I'm basically exiting the corner a lot better. And I did not change anything about the car or whatever, but there's also something you can do to improve the handling of your front tires as you trail brake into these corners to gain even more performance, because we still have the rear tires on a very safe workload. We want to use those rear tires more to enter the corners and gain performance, therefore getting better lap times. So how do we increase performance? Well, we want to use these rear tires. How do we create an area where we push the rear tires more of the limit of workload, and how can we create the fronts to be more into the workload, creating a better balance to put these rear tires to work, basically, because they were kind of lazy, right? They were really like under the limit. So by dropping the brake bias, we free up the burden of stopping the car with the front tires. Now, you might think, oh, it's only 4%. That is actually a lot, and I will explain why that is. So by dropping the brake bias, meaning dropping the front value to 48, the front tires don't have the burden anymore of stopping the car so much. And we're transferring that to the rear tires. So what's happening is we're pushing these rears more to the limit. And the front tires, because they have less burden of stopping the car, that means we can use more cornering grip. But there's something else going on here, and that is the load transfer as we brake. The rear brake bias, 52, can become really sensitive. And it is not a guarantee that on every corner this is gonna act out the same. So 52 brake bias might be a great solution in turn 3, and maybe in turn 6 it will be an absolute oversteer nightmare, because what's happening when you shift that brake bias backwards is you run the risk of putting these rear tires outside of the workload. And you guessed it, that's resulting in a oversteer spin on entry. And that is actually costing you more lap time. So you need to find a trade-off in your brake bias, like how low can you go? And it still needs to become comfortable. Now here's the trick. When you're stuck on lap time, you want to drop it. And you want to use, and want to think about this model, and you want to use this new challenging brake bias for your skill level and get the same lap times. Because when you start to get a feel for this, first it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be like dangerous, but you'll actually use the rear tires more. And as soon as you get a feel for lower brake bias and you get a feel for this grip circle, then slowly and gently this lap time is going to come toward you. I mean, that's how it works for me. If I get stuck, if I hit a plateau, lower brake bias. Look at the brake bias, I'm dropping it here. So compared to the other lap and examples, now I have a lower brake bias. Now I'm actually need to learn hypers more, but I got a really good balance with this car. It's a very pretty much aggressive setup, and you can see now here with this brake input it was actually not that great, but we are improving our lap time with like almost 1/10 of a second. Now we're entering this part of the corner, we're hitting the brakes, and I can like have a little bit of a trouble here because of this lower brake bias. Like the rear is switching more, the rear tires are more outside of the workload. So let's follow through with this lap. Over here as well, I know subconsciously I know it's gonna be more tricky, and you can see here I'm on the limit and like kinda not improving the lap time as of yet, but always on every track this is different. But at some point you're gonna find that point where, oh, now it's really helping me on this part of the track. So over here as well I gain a little bit of lap time. Obviously there's lots of driver inputs, yeah, it's more important than brake bias sometimes. But over here you can see like using the rear tires to the max potential. Here I'm braking slowly, and here I actually gain a lot of lap time and got a lot of rotation with my lower brake bias. So here we are. Now when I'm on this straight, I'm even pulling down more of the brake bias. So I'm entering this straight, dropping that brake bias even lower, as you can see here. And now we're entering that straight again, and now we're with an even lower brake bias. We turn into the corner, and you can see how my fronts are so dominant on grip and the rears immediately start losing it. Now, something else I want to point out when you're driving GT3s or like using this for traction control or the throttle application is that these different lines here represent your TC or ABS. So if you're locking up, let's say, a very high value on ABS might stop the wheel from spinning and pushing these wheels constantly back into its workload. Now, if we get this video up to, I don't know, 500 likes, we'll get into the whole TC part. We can apply TC settings, TC cut, TC whatever into this model so you can understand that as well. Now, I have an announcement. I'm almost finishing up my full guide on car setups. How to build your own car setups in every simulator that is out there, and how to learn it with 7 steps. Now, the gold here is not that I'm explaining in this guide, in this product, the difference between an anti-roll bar, but a system. And I have made videos about this, but that is just the surface. This guide will go a mile deep into car setups, how to start building them, how to isolate values, and how to create proper baselines for every GD or GT like in every simulator. So if you're interested in that, or you want to be on the wait list, because I will not publish it to everyone, you can check also the link down below for the art of car setups. This is a very special moment for me because this basically encapsulates every video on this current channel in a 100-page PDF, and there are gonna be videos, guides, tutorials to completely build your own car setups in like a few hours. So check it out. Thanks for watching.